مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد.
So welcome again. Sheikh Arif, our speaker of yesterday and continuing for today, is here. And today we're going to have two different sessions, and we will have a very short break in between. So that break will go according to the flow of things and the discussion that is going. I have actually just confirmed that we are going to continue after lunch. So we'll have a stop around 1 o'clock where we'll have salat set up behind, and lunch will also be provided, but we'll try and move things quite quickly so that we can continue with the session after lunch. Yeah, so now I will hand it over to Sheikh Arif to commence our morning session. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعليه الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. The charm of life in the unpredictability of life and the unpredictable nature of things as they are. And of course, that is the evidence of the existence of God. So there you go, you are looking for answers, you've got one of them already. Now, I don't know if we recall what we stated yesterday, but if we are looking for answers, as a rule of thumb, there aren't any answers that can be given. The answers have to be found within ourselves. Based on this, we will try and clarify further the discussion that we initiated yesterday. But on a lighter note, this has never happened to me before. Not that I've never been late, I've always been late, that's my trademark. But something else has never happened to me before. I have always exclaimed that if I was to stop worshiping God, He will never snatch the breaths that I breathe. And this morning I got an asthma attack. It's quite amazing the way things happen. He is smiling and saying, well, you know I can do it, don't you? And the delay that occurred today coming here was no less than divine. And of course, I would say that in order to cover up being delayed. But Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi stated that I plan and things don't go in accordance with the way I plan. So I know there is something else going on beyond me. But in that delay, what happened was that my asthma went away and I started to breathe properly. Now, you might be waiting for a punchline or something like that. There's nothing there. It was a very personal thing with God. And as soon as I understood, I said, yes, I did make that statement yesterday. And then Sajjad by phone and gave us the directions after that. So had you phoned a little bit earlier, we would have gotten here a bit earlier. But all of this shows, all of this shows that there is something quite beautiful about this world altogether, and also shows that God at times does smile, does play a little bit of a joke, and does teach us in wonderful ways and mysterious ways. Now, continuing from yesterday.
Excuse me, just out of curiosity, have you had asthma attack before?
Yes, about 5 years ago.
Just want to know.
But never in Toronto. Yeah. Always in a polluted environment, but today is the first time it happened in Toronto. It's amazing. And that's true, I did have an asthma attack this morning. And it went away only 10 minutes before I got here. I was finding it very difficult to breathe. But it only went away when I realized what I had said yesterday, and then smiled. And then it went, and that's it, and we are here now. But this is all very, very meaningful, even though you will think it's a cover-up, but it's not. I'm a very saintly person. What I say is something that is divine, so please ponder on it. My wife is still to be convinced about that anyway, after 27, 8, 9 years. I don't know how long we've been together. Yesterday's discussion, continuing from it, just to clarify something before we get there. The problem of suffering does not pose a problem for a believer. In fact, the believer, through suffering, looks to God and asks, "Oh God, make me understand what is happening." Or the believer turns to God with trust and asks Allah to help them through the suffering. It does not pose a problem for the believer. At times, the believer feels that God has abandoned them. At times, the believer feels that they are the cause of the sufferings that are coming to them. At times, there is a question, well, what is happening? Is there a greater thing that is happening here? At times, the believer is faced by an atheist who states, well, actually, your God does not exist. Otherwise, he would not allow suffering to continue. At these points, the believer is thrown into a confusion, and they begin to justify the existence of God. And the whole of the exercise becomes unreal, because the justifications don't stack up. We can never ever justify God in the face of suffering, because there is so much that we don't know. And in the absence of knowledge, whatever justification we offer will not be an accurate justification. So if the believer is left alone, they have no problem with suffering and with the existence of God. In fact, God acts very positively during those moments of suffering. But when faced at a later date with an intellectual problem, it confuses the believer. And in the attempt to respond to the question, the believer begins to lose that beautiful connection that they had with God prior to this intellectual endeavor. Most of us, when we embarked on religious studies, we found that we lost God altogether. The God that we used to see and we used to worship has now become hidden behind veils of causality, philosophical explanation, and reason. A God that did not know any formality can now only be approached through formal means. God becomes distanced altogether. It is here that we need to, again, reconnect with that core of our beings and say to ourselves, no, I know in there, deep in there, that He is beautiful, and I am going towards Him. Now, of course, we do want to present arguments and not make it faith-based, but it is important that we do talk about it for a moment. I remember in my earlier days, when I began religious education and was studying theology and came upon the whole discussion of free will and destiny, ended up saying to God, there is no need for me to pray at all to you, for everything has been predestined. Even if your prophets are unable to access your destiny, you know ultimately what your destiny is. And at that point, I was faced with a choice, and I said, no, I'll stand on the prayer mat, raise my hands, and say to Allah, even though I know it's futile to pray to you, but I will trust you in this instance and put aside my own understanding and still do what you ask me to do. And after that, the answers began to suggest themselves, and a far more meaningful universe emerged. But the whole thing about God and the individual is this trust in God, this beautiful, intimate, deep-rooted connection with God. Now, going towards the answers, all the questions that we posed yesterday. Can everybody hear me? Yes? The questions that we posed yesterday. And we saw all of the God justifications or the theodicies that were offered were flawed, were insufficient, could not adequately answer the questions posed by the atheist based on certain life experiences that we can all relate to either directly or indirectly. At the most, what we found were descriptions as to why it is like this. But none of them asked the fundamental question. If you remember, we gave this analogy of a person who finds themselves in a hospital subsequent to a car accident. And they say, where am I? What am I doing here? Now, these questions may seem fundamental questions, but they are not. Because they presume I am and I know who I am. So these questions follow on from two major presumptions. I am and I know who I am. And after that, I can ask the question, well, where am I and what am I doing here? The questions, the responses that we had to the question were based on these two according to my understanding. Where am I and what am I doing here? And there is a great flaw in this type of thinking, because no matter how we deal with it, in terms of these two questions, where am I and what am I doing here, it will never ever answer the question. How? Let us reason with it. I am in this world. Why? God put me here. Why? So that I may evolve, become God-like. Why is there evil? Because evil leads to the appreciation of good. Otherwise, there would be no sense of good. These are the sort of answers we got. We ask a question beyond. Well, why should He have made a world in which He places me and asks me to become God-like? The answer was, because He has made every other type of world, and this was the only world that remained to be made. I said, well, why was He so irresponsible? Just because He wanted to do something for His own self, to demonstrate to His own self His abilities, did He have to create me in such a miserable place? Especially when the risks are so great that I will not make it? Especially when I am becoming godlike at the expense of 7 billion people? Is this what a responsible God does? On the other hand, He is kinder, more compassionate than a mother. My mother would never do this to me. She would never put me in this hellhole. The fourth Imam states that, O Lord, had it not been but for that, then the mere remembrance of that would have taken away the pleasure of life. But what may I say, and how do I complain to you, when I know that that which is to follow that will make that seem a pleasing place? If only my mother would not have given birth to me. Now I ask myself, God, why have you created me in this world with such turmoil? I would much rather not have been created than to have been created and face the perils that are there. I am not becoming God-like at all. If anything, I am drifting away from humanity and the essence of humanity. Even this response is inadequate. In fact, it brings about a notion of God that is wholly unacceptable. It is not a perfectly good God, kind God, wise God. Which God plays such foolish games with His creatures? I often give this analogy. The world in which the theist lives, the world in which the people of faith live, can be explained in terms of a person caught inside a room. He awakens inside the room, and there is an instruction there that there are 1,000 doors leading to the next room. Only one of these doors will safely take you to the next room. 999 doors are booby-trapped, and as soon as you open it, you will be blown to pieces. That is the world in which a theist is existing, in accordance with their notion of God. Now, if a person, through luck, intervention, call it whatever we want, finds that he opens or she opens the right door and goes into the next room. In the next room there are 2,000 doors, from which only one lead to the next room. This is the world of a theist. The only thing that can sustain a proper human being and life is that beautiful faith. But at an intellectual level, the theist is truly messed up. Is truly messed up. Their life, their world, their God doesn't make sense at all. The reason is that there are two fundamental questions that have not been asked. Who am I? And what am I? Imagine, the finger of blame is being pointed at God. Why? Because we ask God, why did you create me? And if you have created me, why in this life? What if the response is, but you wanted to be created? Don't you remember? It was your choice. Now, if that component can be placed in there, it begins to solve the whole problem. Why are you complaining? You wanted to be here. You knew the rules of the game. You took it on. But why don't I remember? But the whole game was that your remembrance is your motion to me. Don't you remember? But how can you remember? It is not something that you get out of a book. The truth is you. It is not in the Quran. It is not in the speech of the Prophet. It is not with the saints. You are the truth. You have taken it on upon yourself. And your answer awaits to emerge. The very fact that you ask the question, what is the reason, is your calling to become the answer itself. But now you might say, well, this is all too up there when we can't understand it. The Quran says, يَوْمَ يَتَذَكَّرْ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّ لَهُ الذِّكْرَى. The day on which man shall remember, but of what use shall his remembrance be on that day? يَقُول, he shall exclaim, يَا لَيْتَنِي قَدَّمْتُ لِحَيَاتِي. If only I had sent something forth for my life. Allah states in the Quran, لَقَدْ عَرَضْنَا أَمَانَتَنَا عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ. We indeed gave our trust to the heavens, to the earth, to the mountains, but they refused in awe to bear this trust. A human being bore it. Indeed, a human being is oppressive and ignorant. The Quran states, we took the oath from the progeny of Adam, and we said to them, from their loins, we said to them, am I not your Lord? قَالُوا بَلَا. They all said, yes, you are the Lord. God responds, least on the day of judgment you say, O Lord, we were unaware. Or that you say, O Lord, we followed our forefathers, we are not to be blamed. All these verses are indicating it's something profound. Something has happened, and we have forgotten about it. But if I can be told that you made a choice to come here, and you knew exactly what you were letting yourself into, then the whole question of theodicy is done and dusted. It's finished. I knew the rules of the game, I chose it. And that's when I came here. Let's explain it differently. I ask myself, there is a brilliantly ordered, designed, meticulous world here. everything fits into place. There is nothing out of place. From the massive stellar constellations to the quantum particles, everything is there. Why should this aspect be out of sync? It doesn't follow. It just doesn't follow. Why should this not fit in properly? So obviously it must fit in properly. Then I ask myself, by definition, God is needless. Does he have a need to be nasty to me? The answer is no. In my human state, through my human nature, I know compassion, charity, love, forgiveness, all of these things are my human calling and are good, commendable, and I encourage the world towards them. The world is becoming more charitable. How can he, who has been the creator of all of this, not be in the same nature? I dislike torturing others. Even the most cruel-hearted person will be kind to his own. Saddam dearly loved Uday and Qusay. Hitler loved to extremes his own nation, his people, his own kind, those who were near to him. Fir'aun loved his immediate family. Even the people who have no kindness in their hearts love their own. Even a psychopath who does not feel empathy has affection towards their own. When this is my condition, why should it not be the condition of the author himself? What need does he have to be unkind? What need does he have to be the way I have described him to be in that problem of theodicy? The answer is there is no need, and therefore this inquiry should begin. But even then we haven't had the answer. Because I'm asking myself, okay, I made the choice. But could I not have been like a little child who is very, very naive, who makes the choice when given the choice? Wasn't Adam a naive child when he took that fruit and ate it? His intentions were noble, but he did not know what he was letting himself into. However, had he been informed, would he have made the same choice? The only thing Adam knew was, you have all these toys to play with, don't play with that toy, and immediately runs to that one, obviously. Why was I in the first place to be given a choice? Can you see that? The problem doesn't end. I can still ask the question, well, if I wasn't, I wouldn't be given the choice. It is only because I was that I was given the choice. By the way, we are going towards the mystical and spiritual explanations. The answer is that God cannot escape blame. Even if prior to this world, I was given a choice, it still begs the question, well, why was I made to be given a choice in the first place? Because if I was made in a particular way to accept the choice, to accept the challenge. Does that make sense? And it doesn't resolve the problem at all. A naive thinker would say, well, I made a choice and then I came here, so that's it. And now I have to do my best to remember what I've done. But a person who is in sync with the truth will ask, well, why was I made in the first place to be given a choice anyway? And if I was made and given a choice, then why was I given those inclinations through which I would make the choice in the affirmative? God still takes blame for me and my choice. It is here that we come to the most fundamental of all questions. Well, who am I? Think about this very, very carefully. A problem in thinking was introduced by Plato, in which he stated that there is a perfect world and there is an amorphous world. The perfect world imparts some form of framework, consistency, and system on this amorphous world through which this world grows. He was the first one to create this duality in our minds, in the concrete. And we have never been able to rid ourselves of this duality at the level of our thinking. Although it does explain the truth in some ways, but the problems that it has caused has been immense. Because me and you feel as if we have come from some place and gone into these bodies. How nonsensical is that? How nonsensical is that? Think about this. Can you ever be created? Can I ever be created? I ask myself, who am I? First and foremost, the answer is, am I at all in the way that I'm asking? Or am I just a composition of everything that happens around me? But after acknowledging that, there is still something there that says, I am. And I ask myself, who am I? Can I ever be created? Well, what is the meaning of creation? When I say my children are my creation, I know immediately they are not, because they defy me. They have their own personality. They have their own identities. They are not my creation. I have just been a means for their arrival into this world. Is my motion my creation because it doesn't defy me? But with age and loss of agility, I can no longer do this at will. Even this doesn't seem to be my creation. Is my memory my creation that I can recall it? But with the loss of memory and progression in age, I am seeing that even that is not my creation. I ask myself, then in that case, what is it that I can create? And the answer is only one: momentarily the thoughts that I can create. Although those thoughts are triggered off by many other things, but I feel for that very little moment that I can. Salawat. I feel that my thoughts are in my control, that I can cause them to exist, I can cause them to cease, I can modify them, and I can refine them, retune them. They exist for as long as I want, they cease to exist when I want. They go into oblivion when I want, they become destroyed when I want. They resume existence whenever I want. This is my creation. In that way, am I a creation of anybody else? If that is the case, then I am wholly subjected to that other entity. If that is the case, then I am not myself. Can you see that? I am a thought of somebody else. But if I am the thought of somebody else, then I have no right to say I am. Because it is he who is, not me. But the fact that I say I am shows that I am not created at all. I don't understand a beginning and I don't understand an end. Persevere with me for a little while. I don't understand the beginning, I don't understand an end. All I know is that I have awoken. The whole of this beautiful existence has chosen to awaken through me. Once I am awake and aware, there is no going back. There is no sleeping anymore. I am. I can't become oblivious to myself. I could never have been other than what I am. The whole of this notion that I was, in the way the theists think, and I made a choice and I came here, is pure nonsense. It doesn't make sense at all, because the way I am right now is the way I am. I wasn't like this 10 years ago. This I that is there now did not exist even 10 years ago, this identity. If I was there, and if I was this that I am now, then throughout this earthly life I should have been this identity, the one who made the choice, not the identity that was there 10 years ago. Then in that case, what was the identity that was there? In this way, we begin to find that no, in the realest sense, there was no sort of God that I presume who asked me a question, Arif, do you want to be created? Do you want to take on that challenge? It was a very different story, and the story is very, very different. And there is, in the realest sense, no God and no me in the dualistic sense that we presume. We always think about a God who has created me, put me into this existence, and now testing me and trying me. That altogether does not make any sense. And yet, we find that there is. Now, in the Hindu literature, we find that they say there is no question of proving the existence of God. You can never do so. God is. Existence is. The whole endeavor of this awakening is to understand how it all is. The Imams have stated this in a different way, but the same truth, and they have said, لا يعلم كيف هو إلا هو. No one knows how he is save he himself. For I am an awakening of the truth, so are you. There are 7 billion other awakenings of the same truth at this given moment. But that is the human awakening. The butterflies have awoken to the truth in their own capacity. The ants in their own capacity. The lions in their own capacity. The plant kingdom in its own capacity. The inanimate kingdom in its own capacity. Everything has awoken. And that great awakening is his awakening. It is my awakening. Now there is a way out of this maze. But the first thing we begin to resolve is that I either made a choice to come here. If that satisfies anyone, then let it satisfy them and no more questions to be asked. If it doesn't satisfy, then to ask this question, well, who am I? And we come to this response that I can never ever be created. Once I say I am, that enjoys eternity and infinity. Now we come to this world from a mystical perspective. And why is this world in the way that it is? And who am I? And we invoke Rumi for this. And of course, he bases all of his insights upon the Quran. The first thing the Quran resolves for us, and the mystics tell us, and I want to talk about this in the next part of the talk, is that me, you, he, she, it are not distinct individuals as we imagine ourselves to be. It is only our lack of perception that brings this notion into our minds. It is like a forest fire, our case in humanity. There is a fire on one side of the forest. The other side of the forest is complacent, thinking, well, they are burning, they are suffering. What they don't know is they are all intimately connected. That if something happens there, it will have a knock-on effect on what is happening here. This is one thing we have forgotten in our equations, in our thinking. That if others are suffering, I am in turn suffering. If others are in a state of prosperity, then so am I. And this makes sense when we look at the prophetic lives and the lives of the Imams. They were supreme individuals in terms of their wisdom, insights, and understanding. Yet, contrary to my judgment, they were social creatures and fully engaged with the society and social reform and betterment. Me, on the other hand, my judgment is this, that I should retreat to a cave, away from the effects of the society, and try and better myself and save myself. Their perspective was that the community at large is the greater human. Whatever is good for the community is good for the individual. You share the same fate. And this is something we observe. collective humanity is evolving and becoming good. And Mahdiism is another name for that glorious existence of moral human community. So the first thing is, as the Quran teaches us, that there is no sense of you as opposed to the rest. You haven't awoken to the truth yet to a desired level. The Quran states, we have created the whole of humanity from a single soul. So the first thing is that everything is one. Two, questioning evil and good. There is in the realist sense no evil, and there is in the realist sense no good. Yes, good and evil are there in contrast to each other. But as a whole, there is no good and evil. Now, how do we explain that? Let us give some mundane examples, and then we'll go towards the loftier examples. When somebody extracts a knife and places it upon somebody's neck and begins to cut, there is no evil or good in this act. Yes? The knife is obeying its nature. The skin is obeying its nature. Now, imagine that knife on the neck of a goat that is being put to death in order to feed starving, hungry people. What is that act? It is an act of good. Again, imagine that knife is being placed on the neck of the goat, but not in order to feed hungry, poor people, but in order to diminish the stock of our opponent. It's done maliciously. What is that act? It is evil. But the act is one. It's the knife, it's the goat, it's the neck. You termed it good this way, you termed it evil that way. As far as the existential act was concerned, you can't term it as good or as evil. What was termed as good and evil was the objective from it that you had. Yes? Now, there is a knife upon the neck of a goat that is being slaughtered in order to feed the poor. But that goat is not yours. It's been stolen from the neighbor. What is that act? It is good, it is evil, it is both in one, it is none. What is it? What is that act? Earthquakes. Are they good? Are they evil? An earthquake happens in the Sahara. Nobody is affected by it. It's good because the earth is evolving. An earthquake happens in the middle of a populated, densely populated city. It's evil, so many people have died. An earthquake happens in a place where it is unnoticed. We can't even attribute it with good or evil. However, so many microscopic beings were put to death. Isn't that evil? I step upon a despicable spider. That's no evil. But I go and kill a cat. That's evil. Why? Is it because cat resembles me more than a spider? Is it because the spider does not have a sound that it can make, does not openly display gestures of emotion, is not cuddly, I cannot share affection with it, that the spider's life is demeaned? Think about it accurately. Good and evil is a very different thing to the way we have understood it. But now in the overall scheme of things, let us look at good and evil. If we look at existence as existence, the entirety of existence, we want to come back to the God equation again in a little while to revisit it and resolve some of these things before we can come to ways of thinking and maybe arriving at answers. If we think of existence as existence in its entirety, now you might say, well, what nonsense is this? I'm sure many people are saying it, so I'll explain it. This is Taj Banquet Hall, which is other than is it Kia Motors? Yeah. They are separated through location. But in terms of Steele's West, they are one. Now you might be thinking, this man doesn't even remember the names of his own daughters. How did he remember Taj Banquet Hall? Because I got lost, obviously, and was told 20,000 times Steele's West and Kia Motors and Taj Banquet Hall. I'm sure these are not going well, these comments, so we'll go back and resume our talk. But Steele's Avenue West is other than East. But in terms of Toronto, it's one thing. Toronto is other than Ontario, and in terms of Canada, it's one thing. Canada is other than America, but in terms of North America, it's one thing, and America is other than Africa. In terms of the Earth, it's one thing. And the Earth is other than the Moon, but in terms of the solar system, it's one thing, and the solar system, in terms of the Milky Way, is one thing, and Milky Way, in terms of the stellar constellations, is one thing, and the physical universe, in terms of existence, is one thing, with the angelic realms and the multiverses that are there. Now, if you look at existence as existence in its entirety, you will find no value of good or of evil in there. It's just existence. And as such, it's beautiful. What happens is, as this existence is growing, evolving, the physical existence, it's tearing itself apart. As it tears itself apart at every level of existence, we attribute those observable facets of growth as good. And those facets that appear to be destructive as evil. But existence as existence has no addition and no subtraction within it. So existence in its entirety has no good, no evil inside it. It is only through our observation of the facets of good and evil, which is momentary and very subjective and relative, that we bring about the judgment of good and of evil. But if we could observe things in a way that they can be observed, maybe our judgments would change. Now here is a spiritual example. Zainab would faint when she would hear about the talk of Imam Hussein's martyrdom. We know this from the Maqatil. Now, there came a point where she stands in a court and Hussein Salamullah alayhi's head is in a tray. And Ibn Ziyad pokes at the face of Imam Hussein Salamullah alayhi and states, "You had a cheerful face, O Hussein." Then he looks at Zainab and he says, "How did you find the decree of our Lord regarding your brother and me?" And she says, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." I have not seen anything but beauty. She was at another level of existence where she could see things in a way that we are yet to see. So good and evil are wholly subjective values that we are giving. Otherwise, there cannot be any evil that contrasts good or good that contrasts evil. If anything, there is nothing but good and beauty in this world of ours. 2, let us look at it from the mystical perspective of Rumi. He states that if a painter were to paint Joseph and Zuleika and depict beautiful gardens, we would say how beautiful is the painting that he has transferred upon the canvas through his genius and the imaginative faculty. But we ask him, what about its contrast? He says, I am unable to do that. And then we look at the painting of another one who draws dungeons, the despicable horrors of hell, its ugliness upon a canvas that fills us with horror and loathsome feelings. We say, it is indeed ugly what you have drawn. Then we say, indeed you are an accomplished artist. For you can draw equal beauty and you can draw equal ugliness. And the one who can only draw beauty is less than you in accomplishment. Beauty and ugliness to its entirety and extremes is a sign of completion. And this is the nature of the human being. There is nothing in this world, there is nothing out there but that me and you have it in there. We are capable of utmost ugliness and we are capable of utmost beauty, and had it not been for these two fluctuations, we would not be complete human beings. Not only does good and evil not have value in the way we have understood, in the realest sense, good and evil go towards making us what we are as complete human beings. And it makes God that beautiful creator that He is. Now, we resort to the tafsir, we resort to the hadith of Usul al-Kafi, again, explaining mystically. Imam Sadiq stated that God created heaven and He created hell. So God is neither heaven nor is He hell. He created intellect on the right of the throne and He created ignorance from the left of the throne. He said to intellect, advance, it did so. He said to intellect, retreat, it did so. He said to intellect, advance, it did so. He said to ignorance, retreat, it did so. He said to ignorance, advance, it refused. It adorned the intellect with 1,000 qualities. Ignorance looked towards God and said, I am its twin, adorn me with the same. And God adorned ignorance with the same, in an opposing manner. God is equally the author of the intellect. He is equally the author of ignorance. He is untouched by both. God as God is untouched by both. God is untouched by heaven. God is untouched by hell. He is untouched by good. He is untouched by evil. He is not touched by intellect nor by ignorance. Yet all are His beautiful creations. Then we begin to see, well then, what is happening in this world? If heaven serves a purpose, then why should there be hell? We begin to realize that no, hell serves equally good purpose as heaven. In fact, they are not as we have understood. They are altogether intertwined, just as me and you are intertwined in our abilities. At every point that I have the decision to do something good, I can do something evil. They are not the things that we imagine them to be. They are something altogether very different. Then God, what about God? God is not the God of good and not the God of evil. He is both the God of good and both the God of evil. When the Meccans went to war with the Prophet of Islam, they went to war seeking assistance from God Himself. When the Prophet defended his territory and religion, he did so seeking assistance from God Himself. There is no question of God, an enemy of God opposing God. It is God, and beyond God or below God, then you have friend of God and enemy of God opposing each other. But God as God cannot be opposed by any. It's just like good and evil opposing each other, but existence as existence knows no good, knows no evil. God as God in that state of God does not know a friend, does not know an enemy. He does not know any of these distinctions. Then what is happening in this world of ours? Rumi talks about there being a fundamental. And the fundamental for Rumi is test. The test and the suffering of this world is a fundamental, and it plays a huge part in revealing to us what we are. He states, and becomes a spokesman of the devil, and he says about Shaitan, that Shaitan laments, and he says to the son of Adam, you give me far more credibility than I'm due. I'm not the creator of evil or good. Why do you hold me so lofty? I only put a bait. You fell for it. And then Rumi says that if a dog and a deer were to mate, and if you are unsure of the offspring, then place before it herbs and bones. If it rushes to the herbs, know it is a deer. If it rushes to the bones, know it is a dog. This is the whole process of life. That through all of these trials, we are beginning to reveal ourselves to ourselves. There are one or two more points we need to make, but the whole process of life, test, awaits our response. And our response reveals to us what we are. I don't know who I am or what I am becoming. Iblis, prior to that test, did not know what he was. The test was placed and Iblis was revealed to himself to be Iblis. Adam did not know who he was. That test was placed before Adam, and Adam revealed himself to be Adam the glorious. But the responses determined how they became. Iblis turned to God and he said, "You trapped me. It's your fault. And therefore I will misguide every one of the progeny of this creature, the one that you have honored above me." Adam made the same mistake, and Adam could have, in a more meaningful way, turned to God and say to God, "But God, you know what you are doing, and you led me to this. You know you did it." But Adam chose a different response. And he said, "Lord, I have made a great error. Allow me to improve." This is what is happening to me and you in this world of ours. First and foremost, not only have we made the choice to be here, but we weren't even given a choice. We were the choice and the choice makers. We wish to awaken in this way. Why? Because me and you yearned for a glory that could not be yearned by heavens and the earths put together. But me and you wanted to be the ultimate authors. And hence we awoke in this way and decided to. You see, the heavens and the earth put together, the animals and the plants put together cannot add color to the world. The world adds color to them, but me and you are such tremendous beings that despite being subjected to the world, we can author the world as and how we want. We can reduce God to an unjust God. We can bring God to a pedestal of being all kind. We can make God the most loving. We can bring God into existence, and we can drive God outside the ambit of existence altogether. Whether God is there or not, my individual perspective will determine how I see it and how my world is shaped. We make this world into a beautiful world, like Zainab. I have not seen anything but beauty. We can make this world into a despicable world, like Iblis. Everything is the fault of the other. We chose to awake in this way. Me and you put together chose to awake in this way, and we chose to awake, not that we are already knowing. We chose to awaken in this way, not that we are already all-knowing. And then, now, the moving world and the tests of the world are there in order to allow us to reveal ourselves to ourselves as to who I am. But Allah at every instance does encourage us and does tell us and points us to the secrets as to how to awaken fully. He says, "I am with those who endure." Our problem was suffering. Our problem was tests. Yes? God says, "I am with those who endure." So I ask myself, in this world of mine, what is it that I am gaining anyway? Leave aside my clothes, my garments, my possessions, even this substance that makes my skin leaves me at every moment to be replaced by new one. What am I gaining? Even this body is losing its agility and descending to the earth as I progress in age. Even this is leaving me. What am I gaining? Truly, what am I gaining? If I say to God, give me ease, but what is it that I am asking for? And what am I gaining? Whereas God says, on the other hand, I am with those who endure, who are patient. What do I want in any case? What can I have in any case? We said yesterday that bury my plastic cards with me in my grave, because that is what I have gained. Maybe dig a big enough grave to bury some of my books with me. In fact, bury 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 of them. Bury them all with me. What have I gained? Am I taking any of this with me? To be honest with you, a theist perspective is the pharaonic perspective. You know, Pharaoh used to imagine that once I'm in my grave, the slaves will accompany me and so on and so forth. I do the same thing. My 100 rakat namaz will come in a sack and be buried with me. Nothing of the sort is happening. Nothing of the sort is happening. In a meaningful way, the only thing I am gaining is myself and nothing else. I, who was a person who lacked confidence, am now filled with confidence. I, a person who lacked courage, am filled with courage. I, a person who broke in the face of calamity, am now as strong as a lofty mountain and stronger still. That calamities can come before me, I shall not break. It is here that I can say, yes, I have gained. But what have I gained? I have gained my own self. And that has been the only truth. And that translates as me gaining Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Now look at it in this way. If you were to abuse me and swear at me, and if I were to interact with that, then that just shows to me my own level of existence. It reveals to me where I stand. And if I were to say something to you, and it disturbs you, and you lose sleep over it, and it affects you from within, then it shows that you are so frail and so weak that one word from me can make you or destroy you. If my armies give confidence to me, then my army rid confidence when they go away. If my wealth gives me strength, then my wealth is the cause of my weakness. A true person who is strong is a person who is strong without his armies, like Hussein was. A wealthy person is not one who is surrounded by wealth, but a person who is still dignified beyond the wealth. So in the whole of this world, what have I gained? Only myself. How do I gain it? Through a process of trials and tests. Now these tests are of different kinds. Allah asks me to persevere. As soon as I persevere your abuse, I have become as big as that and grown beyond it. Henceforth, nobody shouting at me, swearing at me can move me from my position of calm and strength. But if I abuse you again, then that reveals to me my state of existence and where I am. And the tests do that for us. But tests are of different kinds. Sometimes we are tested with loss. Sometimes with gain. Sometimes with sickness. Sometimes with health. Sometimes with popularity, and sometimes with dignity, and sometimes with humility. And at other times we are tested intellectually. And at times we are tested spiritually. All these are wonderful facets of this world in which me and you are. And one of the pressing questions that arises is this: why is there needless evil? It is here that we respond that actually there is nothing that I have observed in the wider universe that has been needless. Everything is purposeful. And if I understand this principle, that if you persevere, then Allah is with you, then this is an invitation for me to grow through it. I'm just going to bring this session to a close now by saying that the fundamentals of this problem are not the way the theists are looking at. It's in a very different way. The problem is created by the whole of this dualistic model in which there is God and there is me. And now I'm trying to reconcile everything through this model of a distinct God who is all-powerful and me who is subjected to the laws of God. And then I say, why does he not alleviate this suffering? Why did he create me? Why did he do this? And then I naively find justifications for God. The answers are not to be found there because it's a non-starter. It's a wrong way of thinking. The answer is, there is no God there, as opposed to here. He says, هُوَ الْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ وَالظَّاهِرُ وَالْبَاطِنُ. He is the first, He is the last, He is the apparent, He is the hidden. أَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, there you shall find the face of God. He is the one who has said, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He is with you wherever you may be. He is a very intimate, immanent God. That's the first thing. The second thing, He has no need to create such a despicable level of creation. He has no need. He has no need to be unkind. He has no need to leave such great messes upon the face of this earth that baffle us and bewilder us. He has a need to do that so that they may be means to test us and to call us to His beautiful self. Only that much, nothing else. 3, my God can never be so irresponsible as to create me and to place me in this world and to then create the whole of this scenario and drama that was not in my control. My God can never be so irresponsible as to create me and then give me a choice, and like a child I naively make the choice in the affirmative, because then again He would not be the God that I desire to worship. It shows that there has never been what I imagine, that He originated me, gave me a choice, and then I came here. The story is a different story altogether. He is God the beautiful. I am His awakening. If only I knew who I was, I would rejoice. But then, the journey of awakening is an invitation for me to lose myself in order to become myself. The only reason I am not understanding is because I haven't become yet. And there are no answers. There can never be any answers. The theist mind is a lazy mind. They want answers, but there aren't any answers because the individual themselves is the answer. The final thing was, well, why are we in this world that has so much suffering? The answer is that this is the world I have chosen in order to awaken and in order to become my full self. These were the responses offered by the mystics and through spiritual literature. If we can just pause for a moment and then discuss this before we go on to the next session. I am the author of hell and heaven. And hell and heaven is still there, because the whole of the awakening is also authoring hell and heaven. It exists with me, through me, in my attitude, beyond me. Same is the state with the whole of existence in its entirety. I am the merciful, I am the vengeful, I am the good, I am the evil. Every awakening is the same. but I am me. In the same way, it was my own choice to awaken, and I had no choice but to awaken. There was a cry in the being of God, I am a hidden treasure, I want to be found. There is a cry in me, I am a hidden treasure, I want to be known. The tests of life are designed for me to awaken. The tests of life are chosen by me. I can choose to become oblivious to all tests, and there will be no tests. I choose to awaken to these tests. I can choose to turn a blind eye to the sufferings of others. I choose not to. It is my awakening. I am responsible for the good and for the bad that is coming to me. I am an individual and I am the whole community at large, but I'm not beginning to understand this. I am the human community and I am the world at large. I have yet to understand that. But it can't be otherwise, and I don't understand how anybody can say it is otherwise. God, that we call God, is through me and through everything together. And God is God at the same time. God sees and hears through me and through everybody else. Collectively and beyond it, it boils down to one thing, is, as the Imams have explained, or as the verse explains, Qul huwa Allah. Say He is, finished. He is. And that is Allah, the grand name for the sacred essence of God. He cannot be known. I cannot be known. I don't know who I am or what I am. So in the final analysis, what we are saying is that the whole of the theistic problem is wholly based upon the belief of a God in the way we understand who has created us. But it's a wholly nonsensical belief. It makes sense in a different model, but in the model in which the theist operates, it does not make sense. He believes in a God that is all-capable, true, all-knowing, true. Yet he admits to a duality in which God, the benevolent, all-knowing, all-caring, has created me. But what was the point of creating me if he already knew the end result? What was the point of creating me when he says in the Quran, the people of heaven shall say this, and the people of hell shall say this. The Prophet shall say this, that my people abandon the Quran. What was the point of the whole of this process if the end result is already known and given to us? Maybe there is something wrong in the way we are thinking. Maybe the case is not one of past, present, and future. Maybe the case is one of absolute present, that everything is, and it is right now. The theistic God fails to satisfy us, not at the level of faith, because in our naivety, we very gently and beautifully submit to Him and find comfort through Him. We attribute things to His mysterious ways. We trust Him and say, you know better. The faith is right, but the intellectual thinking is wrong. But if we can get that right, then that can deepen the faith to an extent that we can't imagine. Because every experience then will lead to a greater awakening. I am the one who has chosen the world of change in order to receive that grand prize. Hell is not a place of evil. Only in comparison to heaven it is a place of evil. Hell is within me, and I live through hell at all points. I say to God, extinguish the fire of hell? He says to me, I do, you rekindle it. I say to God, give me paradise. He says, it is yours for taking, you run away from it. The idea is that we are operating in a world which is not a true world. The world that we are suggesting appears wholly an unbelievable world, but show me a world other than the one we are suggesting right now. And the world that we are talking about is a world in which an atheist would again find the same meaning. Because the atheist may deny God, but the atheist is only denying a theistic God. He is not denying God per se. Because the atheist will awaken and say, who am I? What is going on? Where am I? What am I doing here? These are the core questions that stem from here, and that is the cry of God in all of us. Now we have to be very, very careful in our language. I'm just going to resort to a particular analogy and then take on the questions that are there, and please do criticize at will, because that criticism will generate further discussion. And it was meant to be criticized, and criticized heavily. Yes, whether philosophically, spiritually, or whatever way, or faith-based criticism. If you consider, you see, when you look at the Big Bang Theory, it doesn't make sense. Yes, we know the universe might have come from those very humble beginnings, but it begs the question, well, where did that come from? It still begs the question, where did it come from? Either say, has always been, or find a solution to it. If we can consider the analogy our Urafa give us, and the one that actually is supported by our spiritual literature, that consider an ocean and consider the waves and the ripples within the ocean. There are two types of observers. One marvels at the waves and says, how wonderful are these waves. The other says, it is nothing but the ocean. Now, the one who looks at the waves and becomes oblivious of the ocean will say the first wave gave rise to the second wave, which gave rise to the third wave. So therefore, the second wave is nothing but a product of the first wave. And therefore, the second wave is entailed within the first wave, and everything that it has is from the first wave. But they forget that directly the ocean is sustaining every subsequent wave. They choose to forget that. You can't have a wave, one after another, without the ocean directly being involved with every one of them. This is how a theist thinks. God, the Big Bang, the solar system, the primordial soup, the monkeys, the human beings, my parents, then me. That's how a failed, frail mind thinks. An accomplished mind would say, but the whole of the process was accompanied by the same stuff, the same substance. It was nothing but the ocean. This analogy will do for now. There are more intimate analogies, but will raise a lot more pressing questions in the mind, so we will abstain from them. Now, there are certain questions that are here, but I was thinking, if some of the discussions that came out of certain tables, if we can maybe pose them and then we can work through them, and then we can come to these questions, and if you could come to the podium and talk about the things that we were talking about. And each table, I hope, will have something to contribute. And especially if it's criticism of whatever I've said now, then I welcome it more than anything.
Question, you said, I can never be created because of that? Is that correct?
The fact is that if I was created, I would be wholly subjected to the author of my creation in the way that I understand creation.
So if I ask the question, who am I, which means that I wasn't created. If I wasn't created, then what am I?
Yes, you have to ask that question, who am I? Am I at all created? That is the question you should be asking. I'm not here to give you the answer.
Right.
Related question to Ali's question would be, I think you said something like, do I have a choice of being here? I don't quite understand that.
You see, the theistic problem and the atheist problem is, why did God create such a world in which there's such a lot of turmoil? The theist cannot respond to this question. However, if we were to introduce another clause within the whole of this thinking and to say, I made a choice of coming here and I knew the rules of the game. If that is satisfying, then that absolves God of all blame. Because I made an informed choice, I knew what I was up against, and then I took on this challenge. The only problem that comes upon God in the former thinking that we were talking about yesterday is that God, why did you create this? Why did you do this? Why is there so much evil? Why can't you intervene? If God can respond and say, but hold on, you knew the rules of the game, you knew what you are up against, and you said to me, well, send me down there. And that's why you are here. Now, if that sort of a response can be given, then that would adequately solve the problem. The only thing that would arise after that is, well, why can't I remember it? And then we start another discussion. Yes? But I'm just saying that response would then resolve the question, resolve the whole puzzle. And it would make sense, even at that very naive level, because we would say, well, everything is in a state of perfection, completeness. How can this be out of sync? So it makes perfect sense that this must also be serving that noble purpose. There's nothing out of place. I mean, from the quantum particles that are not out of place to the wider stellar constellations that are not out of place, why should this one facet be out of place? And if this is out of place, then like domino effect, it would bring other things out of sync and out of place, but that doesn't happen. So the only alternative is that this is also in place, but I'm not understanding how. Then comes a question, well, even if everything is in place, and I'm not understanding, but why should I be here? I didn't make a choice. The answer is, well, what if you did make a choice? You say, well, why don't I remember? Without going into those very mystical questions, we can say, well, can you presume a God who is all kind, who doesn't need to do any injustice, doesn't need to punish, who is all complete, would do something as callous as this? The answer would be no. He would never do something like that. Is that making sense?
A little bit. Thank you.
All right, first and foremost, I believe in God. Now, Mahatma Gandhi said once, there are as many gods as there are human beings. So each one of us has really a very special vision of that God, understanding of that God. So based on that principle and taking the freedom from Mahatma Gandhi, which I believe you may not give me, but I will take it from there. I believe that God is not a micromanager. God created this whole universe, and He put in it, embodied the creation with rules, laws. Yesterday we were dealing with Mullah Sadr. When he talked about evolution, and he talked about evil of the evolution. Well, I would not go that far to call it evil. I would say kind of inequities of evolution. Because when evolution happens, certain people, depending on where you are on the positive side, and on other side you are negative side. You know, if there was an earthquake here and the soil, let's say the earthquake in Sahara, we know there's a underground river or waters in Sahara, and an earthquake would just explode and bring the water from which is under subterranean to an upper level. Then you will see Sahara as to be a very fertile region. Now, why I say that God is not a micromanager? Because on all my years, I have never seen God come down to earth and help an old lady cross a busy street. I've never seen it. Okay, have you? Now, you have seen it. You've seen God Himself coming out and walking. Oh, okay, all right. So it's another human being, not God. Okay. So what I'm saying basically is this: that if God breathed His Spirit into us, then He is in us. Right? And if God is good and evil, then the evil is also in us. Right? Now, what is the purpose of us coming here? You know, I am just a pot. You don't ask a pot, what is the purpose of you being here? It's the potter who knows why he made it. I am just a pot. So I will not dwell into that question without first looking at the life in front of me. Nor would I deal with the eschatology, the life here and after. I got a problem with the life in front of me. Why should I worry about what is happening that I have never seen, and I haven't met anybody who's coming back from there to tell me what it is. So, yesterday I learned something from Mullah Sadr. That's why I did not like that there was a criticism of him. I think he spoke absolutely well. Here's what happens. In all this thing, there is an interconnection between me and my God. So this is where religion is trying to define it. That's why they go into the mumbo jumbo of putting things together to give you the sense of feeling that God is around you everywhere. He's here, He's there, everywhere. You know, God is not a peeping Tom who looks through a keyhole in your bathroom door to see if you are using toilet paper or you're using water, you know, after you had your natural call. So what God is doing to us is this, what Mullah Sadr has told us is this: with evolution, there is the evil, and God is telling us this is the shortcoming of my creation. Now you can say, gee, how can God be shortcoming? How can God be any shortfall? But you know, God is telling you in the scripture, give me a loan. Well, who asks for a loan? If you are surplus, do you ever ask for somebody to give you a loan? No. When you are shortfall, that's why you ask for loan. So God is telling you, give me a loan, I'll give you back many folds. What He's saying to you is this: the inequities that I have created in the creation, the evil that Mullah Sadr is talking about, that evil that I've created, that inequities needs you. I need you to fix them for me. I need you to help the people suffering in Haiti, whom I need you to go to BAM and help people who are destroyed, 100,000 of them, because of the evolutionary pattern in which the earthquake happened and the plates shifted and these people have died. So, if you say, what is the purpose of being here? The purpose then to me is that we are here to do God's work. And all the prophets who have come here, regardless of who they were, they all have the same message. They have the same message: how do we become good people? How do we become conscious of other people's needs? How do we become conscious of and helpful to people who are less fortunate? So if we do all that, then that is our prayer. That is precisely what our prayer is. Thank you.
What place does God have if you're a good humanitarian and you're doing all of those things? Why invoke God in the first place? I don't understand.
What?
If I'm a good human being, I am aware of the plight of the humans around me,
Yes.
and I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to do at a human level. What need is there of God in the first place? Why invoke God at all? I don't understand.
Because there are two sides to us. There's the evil part, which is part of us, which misleads us all the time, which creates all kind of self-greed and self-centeredness, and we have to overcome that.
The United Nations, when they convene, they don't invoke God or spiritual literature or guidance of the Prophet. They declare poverty to be a social evil, and they resolve to overcome it and eradicate it. Injustice, self-determinism. All of these rights are owed to human beings. They don't do it on any basis of faith or on the basis of God. You need to admit that you need to revise the whole notion of God that you're talking about.
They could not do it. United Nations could not have a uniform God indulgence in the policy because
But they're
it's
still
a
arriving-
subjective issue. I mean, people look at God differently.
But they still arrive at the same understanding that you're talking about at the exclusion of subjective gods. I just don't understand your thinking there. I'm so sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm saying whatever you're saying is empty and futile and void of any meaning because according to your theory, human beings would be better off not believing in personal gods with their personal views and creating conflict thereby and uniting on the basis of human ethos and bringing about better world, according to what you're saying.
Yes.
So, in fact, it would be better to stop believing in God according to your account altogether.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying...
I'm saying the logical conclusion of what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying that, yes, there is a presence of God. There's a presence of the universe.
How can he be present when he's not a peeping Tom?
No. Well, there is a presence of God in the universal creation.
What do you even mean by universal creation and presence of God? Explain, please.
Well, if you go to the intellectual
what is the meaning of presence?
Theory, it will be, if you say if Big Bang was the beginning, what was before Big Bang? So there's nothing before. There's always something before.
But what is presence?
Sorry?
What is the meaning of presence? Universal presence is a term that you used.
Yes.
And then you attributed that to God. I don't want to dwell on this too much. Just very quickly now we'll finish this. What is the meaning of presence? You have to admit that there is a huge flaw in our thinking because we don't even use the words accurately. We don't even know what we're talking about majority of the times. I think unashamedly I will admit to that I don't know what I'm talking about and I seek to clarify my own terminology. So there's clarity in my thinking. We need to start off at ground zero and we need to be very honest with ourselves. We need to awaken truly. We need to be very genuine and say, genuinely, I don't know. I'm trying to find, and the steps are these. We clarify our language, we open up to other suggestions and try and build on that. Yeah? I think it's a genuine human endeavor.
You talked about evolution.
No,
No.
you can't deny evolution.
Hold on. You talk about evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk in Mullah Sadr talking about evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there has to be an intellectual evolution as well.
There is, definitely.
Right?
Who can deny?
And there is no intellectual evolution in our theology.
But where is God in all of this?
No, hold on a second. Hold on.
Sure, sorry.
So, when I say there's a presence of God, I do not know where it started, and nor do I care. It's not important to me. Important to me in living is to know that there is a creator. How he created, that's for the philosophers, that's for you people, academicians, to split hair. It's not it doesn't affect me in my life, and nor do I care about them. Okay? So now, once I say that there's God, however it is, it doesn't matter to me. But what I'm saying also is this: what is this God's role in my daily life? Is he a micromanager or is he a macromanager? Has he created an environment for me in which to breathe, in which to live my life, in which to look at other people, to see who are less fortunate, to see if I can extend my hand? You know, if I can do that, I have removed all the conflicts that we have in this world, all the problems that we are causing every day, every night.
No, thank you. That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add to that it is the very notion of God that has led people into justifying killing other people. It is the very notion of God that has led people into keeping poverty in place. It is God that has introduced biases within the minds of people. It has been God who has introduced a superiority conscience within certain faiths over others. Faith-based atrocities always stem from their theology and understanding of God that God ordains them to kill other people and take over their land. It is faith in God that teaches us that others will go to hell and I will go to paradise. It is faith in God that teaches me that I am the chosen one. If you are advocating a God that is a human-friendly God, then I think we will need to put God to death first and foremost before our humanity can evolve in the commonality of the human ethos. Sorry, that was a comment I wanted to share with you after that.
The question, first I want to make a statement, and that comes from your original statement, which was, who am I? I do not like to use the word suffering. I would prefer to use the word change, that changes take place, rather than saying that sufferings takes place. And I want to use myself as an example of what happens to me and what is happening to me, rather than talking in abstract. 2 years ago, I was a different person, very angry, impatient, obstinate, you name it, and I was that, those things. Things changed. I'm still partly that, can't give up all of that, but things have changed since then. And I'm more listening, more willing to listen, accommodate. And that was through an event that went through, I had a surgery, and that according to the doctors, my survival was also at stake. So I changed after that. But the point that after changing, I'm finding that, and this is where my fear factor comes in, that I'm questioning. Previously I was questioning some other things, now I understand them. But now I'm questioning things which are basically the establishment of marjayat, the establishment of this taqlid and all those issues. I'm questioning why taqlid, why follow one marja, why should that be this type of things. And this is creating a fear that am I going through the right processes, or am I going in the wrong direction? And the other point that comes up is that sometimes I want to rush through my prayers, and sometimes I'm trying to find excuses not to say my prayers, although I do say my prayers. But when it comes to doing additional prayers, I say, shall I do it or not do it? And sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't, which was not there before. So those two changes, can you make some comments on this? Thank you.
Never feel afraid of questioning, because your fear stems from within yourself and your lack of confidence within God. Be very comfortable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be very, very, very comfortable. If I feel like complaining against God, then it is my right to complain against God. He is my God. So there is no question of questioning the validity of any of the facets of the Islamic sort of legal system. There shouldn't be any fear, so long as there is sincerity within the heart, and the heart knows that I'm genuinely doing this. There should be no worry at all. The only problem is that we might be convinced of a position, and our questioning is only masking our true intention to undermine, and that would not be sincere. It has to be sincere inquiry. Making haste in prayers, and well, that is human condition. We need to be at ease with our human condition. We need to say to ourselves, well, I am like this, and I can do better. Then maybe once in a while I should try and do better. What happens by and large within human beings is they look at their negative aspects, they begin to loathe themselves, and by loathing themselves, they push themselves further into negativity. There is no negative aspect of a human being, but that potentially it's a positive one. So rather than getting involved in that situation, we should become the third person, acquire a neutral perspective, and say, I have these tendencies. Charity begins at home. I need to be affectionate, forgiving of my own self, and bring myself to another pedestal where I can arrive at, and use that negativity by turning it and directing it towards positiveness. But in all of that, the central tenet must be immense love, trust, faith in Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. So long as that is assured.
I'm not here to ask questions. Just a reminder to everyone. We're going to go until 1 o'clock, 1:05. The questions and comments have been wonderful, and again, just another reminder to keep them concise, brief, so I know there's tons of hands coming up and questions, so we want to get everyone a chance to come up here. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
There are some 99 words attributed to God: ever-knowing, kind, generous, and just. My question is based on the word just. When Harold was told by his astrologers that a child is born who's going to topple you, history book says that Harold sent his army and some 8,000 children were killed. When Pharaoh was told by his astrologer that a child has been born who's going to topple you, Pharaoh sent his army, and history book says about 20 to 60,000 children were killed and slaughtered. My question is, where is the justice of God who allowed 60,000 children to be killed just to save 2 prophets? Thank you.
What is the meaning of justice? What does
beg your
justice,
pardon?
what does justice mean?
Well, one of his attributes is justice.
What
If
is it?
someone calls me, I'm handsome, I'm good looking. So the one of the attributes is justice. My question is, where is his justice when he allowed this thing to happen?
I don't know what justice means. Can you explain?
I don't know, I'm asking you, you're the theologian.
So if we don't know what justice means, how can we raise the question?
Because the name has been attributed to God.
He is called Ghazanfar. Is he Ghazanfar?
I don't know what that word means.
Exactly, I don't know what justice means.
Yeah, but then why do you use the word justice against God?
I don't use it because I don't know what it means.
So the 99 names that we have been pounded with are of no relevance.
Let us explain this. I know we're not going to get anywhere. Justice, our definition of justice is derived from our observation of the universe, isn't it? We say justice means to give everything its rightful due. Yes? Justice means to put everything in its proper place. That's what justice means, doesn't it, for us? Who authored the universe in the way in which it is? God. So who is the author of justice? So whatever terms God decide becomes justice. So if God were to do injustice, by definition that would be justice. Is that understandable? So we can never ask the question, is God just? We can only say whatever God does is just, in a very meaningful way. Yes? Now people will say that's a cop-out, but it's not. It's a very meaningful answer. This is another sort of an aspect of the failure of our understanding.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to make it pretty quick. The example you used yesterday on the 5-year-old girl who was raped and murdered, and you said it was a test. It might have been a test for her mother or her family.
I didn't say any of that.
No, you said today it was a test, but what you go through today is a test.
No, today I said we are the cause of it, and that she did not suffer. All of us suffered. The problem comes, in my mind, why did she suffer such a gratuitous evil? The problem is resolved when I say I suffered. The problem comes in when I say, why did God allow this to be done? The problem gets resolved when I say I am the one who did it. Can you see that? So when you designate the whole of humanity as one entity...
But that's not human condition.
No. But maybe, I'm saying this is a plausible solution if we can only arrive at that, if only we could see it. The Quran talks about humanity being one being. The felicity and damnation of humanity lies in the felicity of humanity as a whole and damnation of humanity as a whole. Humanity within itself has good, evil, heaven and hell. So when that girl was transgressed upon, it was I who was transgressing upon her. When she was suffering, it was I who was suffering.
As
When
humanity,
she was transgressed upon, it was I who was transgressed upon.
but not on an individual basis.
Yes. So this is what I'm saying, that at times what we fail to understand is that the cause of that individual is me, myself. For example, when we look at certain areas of this world that transgress upon other areas of the world through their might and superiority in material terms, I can ask for the earth to open up and engulf them and destroy them. But that would not resolve the problem, because by tomorrow I will produce more of them. My humanity is producing it. The only resolution is that I stop producing those humans. This is what I'm trying to say. That if that girl can be seen not as that young little child, but can be seen a part and parcel of humanity at large, then what suffering she is going through, I am going through it and I don't understand it, but soon enough my eyes will open, because I'm the other side of the forest that is quickly being burnt away, and I'm thinking complacently that others are burning, not me. Yes?
Yes, but you think humanity will progress to that point? I don't think God has given us the individual capacity to go down that road.
The awakening will come as we evolve and progress, and we will open our eyes to the truth as it stands. There is no other way out. This is what we are seeing. That's the hallmark of the whole of this existence, that it is realizing itself at every instance.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I, with due respect, would like to make what might be considered as a criticism, but I don't mean it as a
Please,
criticism.
no, criticize at will.
With apologies in advance. I came to this seminar with the expectation that I would get a solid explanation or definition of God, whether He exists or does not exist. And you may have given that answer, but with the frail mind that I have, I could not grasp it, or it was not specifically or thoroughly explained. I'm very sorry if I have said something wrong. The second thing I'd like to say is this. The circle of science, as it increases, as it progresses, as science progresses, what was explained by the existence or explanations of God is diminishing. Or in other words, what I'm trying to say is that the future of God is diminishing. The need for God is diminishing as science expands its explanation. Now, you might say that, well, can science explain the Big Bang? Well, the natural laws of physics and the whole of science came into being after the Big Bang, where materials interacted with each other and the constants of mathematics and science came into being. And that is why water freezes at 0 degrees and boils at 100 degrees. If it were to freeze at 20 degrees and boil at 40 degrees, we would not be around here. Now you may ask, well, what came before the Big Bang? Well, that's where maybe science and religion come together, because it's the same question as what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't care what, I'll just choose one of them. I'll say the chicken came first, then came the egg, and everything else follows. Makes sense. So I would say that there was a Big Bang, and everything that followed, science can explain. And as science can explain more and more, the only place where they fail is the 1/1000th of a second after the Big Bang. Otherwise, everything after that seems to be explainable, and more becomes more explainable. So the function of God becomes less and less.
Right. Just let me comment on that. My job was not to explain the existence of God. My job was only to say, if God exists, why does evil persist? That was my job. Yes? But in that, what we did was we said, God, like the way the theist believes, does not exist. I concur with the scientists The theistic God does not exist. It's a nonsense God. Yes? The science does not, you said that they can't explain a billion seconds after the Big Bang. In fact, what you wanted to say, they can't explain the immediate before the Big Bang, not that. Yes? It's the other way around. Two, Big Bang is a nonsensical notion altogether. It doesn't make sense at all. Yes? In the way that they explain. They're explaining Big Bang with the presumption. And that doesn't make sense. And in fact, Toronto has an institute where the brilliant minds of the world come, and they're trying to explain away a theory that would accommodate Big Bang. And theosophically, I think we already have lead into that. Yes? That's that. You have just said what I've been repeating again and again throughout this session, that there is no need to search a God. Science is only explaining the workings of is. We are saying is. End of story. There is. Can you not see? We don't need to search for God. God is. He is that tremendous beauty and awe, that majesty, that glory that is. All we do is we discover what is all about. What am I all about? And that is how we modified the notion of God. We weren't out to prove the existence of God. We were only out to strike consistency, or look at the question whether it is consistent to have a God and have suffering. That is all we were trying to do. But in that, we responded that the theistic God is definitely not, because it doesn't make sense. And in place of that, we try to understand a God that is far greater, glorious, loving, ever seeing, knowing, caring, and very, very real. Not somebody who is there, who will come down here, or we will see him there. None of these things make sense.
If I understood clearly, you said Allah has, or God has no friends, and you used the example of Sayyida Zainab and how she reacted. So all of us would react differently. It leaves two questions for me. One, does it then negate the idea of the Ahlul Bayt or the Masums having special powers or privileges that maybe some of us do not have? Secondly, the question that was posed yesterday. We're all predisposed to different genes, different environments. So we all react maybe differently. So where is the justice in that?
Two things. We did not say God does not have friends. We said the model that we are thinking in is false. We say God and devil. Can you see that? We put devil on equal pedestal with God. Or we say God and friend of God. It can never be. It can never be. God as God is oblivious to friend or enemy. Yes? God as God cannot have any of these. It is not the case that God loves paradise more than hell. Hell is an equal product of God as is heaven. Iblis is equally authored by God as Gabriel is. God as God is without any color, yet every color is He. Without any gender, yet every gender is He. Without any religion, yet religion and atheism are both He. God as God cannot have any partner, anybody standing on the same pedestal. It's impossible. It is only after the stage of God that we find two trends of friend of God and enemy of God. And both of them belong to Him equally. There are two distinct trends. The friend of God trend is a state of inner evolution, and the enemy of God is a trend of inner evolution as well, but both in different directions. And hence you get this duality of paradise and hell. That is what we were trying to say. Not that God doesn't have friends, but God cannot be contrasted with friend or enemy.
No, I said I completely agree with you that I don't understand my existence. I don't understand the essence of it. I don't understand why we're here. And if I try to think of God, I think most of us agree that we don't have, we kind of use the word God, but most of us don't understand what that really means. So, but the only thing that I have a problem with is that how Rumi took that step further, going from us not understanding a lot of concept to actually putting some kind of formula or some kind of description to explain that. Now, when listening to the explanation, it seemed a lot of that is kind of playing with words. So when you say, we're human, I am myself, but somebody else might be suffering, then me being human, and we're both part of the same human race or the same universe, then that make us all connected. I think that all depends on how you use the word. So you can say a wave is caused by another wave, but then they're part of the ocean, therefore they're all part of a whole. I mean, yeah, it just depends on how you decide to describe that. However, I think if somebody is actually, I am what I am, and then if a person else is suffering, yeah, I sympathize with them, I feel for their pain, but at the same time, I am not that person and they're separate. At the same notion, if you say that, I mean, we always struggle with the question is how we came to this universe, but I don't think that, and again, I'm sorry, this is my personal thinking, so it doesn't mean that I'm right, I'm just kind of speaking loud, but I don't think that it's actually any of us would say that we had a choice coming here. Now, do I know that for sure? No, I don't. I mean, there's always a possibility that there was some other life. We've been, there's a Hinduism notion of being reincarnated, and then we're here because we were living in some other life, and we're trying to complete our task or our growth. And that's a possibility, but if I have to choose something, I would choose the simplest explanation just to make it simple, and I would say, the reason I was here is something out of my control, and I just happen to be in this universe, and I don't understand it, but for me to make an explanation out of that, I mean, it sounds good, and I think it would be wonderful, but there's a difference between what sounds good and what sounds wonderful and what reality is.
Can we go through some of the things that you've raised, because they're quite interesting. If we subscribe to the Big Bang Theory, and it seems to be a plausible explanation to some extent, yes? But beyond that, of course, it fails. Now, according to the Big Bang Theory, which seems to be very plausible, to the extent that how did it come about? From the time that it came about, it seems absolutely plausible. Yes? The Big Bang Theory.
No, I'm not talking about the I think the Big Bang Theory explained what happened to in certain segment of time, and it's more of a scientific explanation, but that does not explain, and I agree with you, it does not explain who am I as a person thinking entity.
Can I just go through this now slowly?
Sure.
Now, whatever is there in the universe right now, yes? Whatever is there in the universe right now is a product of whatever was there at that humble beginning of the Big Bang. The subatomic subatomic particles, when they went through inflation, they created matter. It generated time and space. Yes? Nothing was added to it from outside, because there's no notion of outside. So nothing can come to it because it's creating the outside, the inside. At that point, there is no notion of space or time or outside or inside. So whatever is here now was there then. There's nothing that's come from outside. All these stars and galaxies and whatever you see were that little dot. All of it was that little dot. It just evolved and expanded. In this way, all of these galaxies, everything that is there is one thing. It was that little point that just expanded, according to the theory. I have not come from outside the universe, because there is no meaning to outside the universe. So the question is, where have I come from is a non-starter altogether, and an atheistic position is far better and far more accurate and far more godly and more divine, that I am the awakening within this. Can you see that? So on the one hand, the whole of the stellar constellations and the blade of grass is the same thing. It's come from that same little dot that blew up. On the other hand, me and you, this supreme sort of intellect, this awareness, we have not dropped into the universe from outside because there is no notion of outside at all. So it's a part and parcel and a product of the awakening of this universe. That is what I was trying to say. As far as the Hindu sort of reincarnation belief is concerned, go back to the beginning, you'll suffer from the same question again. Well, where did that come from? Can you see that? So every faith-based system suffers from this very question.
No, I think we both agree about the question and the dilemma. I think the fact that
I think the problem I'm having is if I start with the questions, who am I, what is my purpose, I have to reconcile that with everything that I've grown up with, namely everything that I've heard in the mosques, namely the Quran that has been given to me, namely the Hadith that have been given to me. So in answering those questions, and if I start with, I guess the question is, do I start with, what tools do I start with? And I think that's one of the questions we asked. And the Quran and the Hadith, are they an integral part of those tools? And how do we know that? If we're going to start with if we're going to start from the, from the ground up and work ourselves up, how can we even rely on tools that we, have assumed to be accurate and to be truthful and to be revealed to us as actually being that? So how do we reconcile the dichotomy there?
Tell me something. Tell me. You have the Quran in front of you.
Yes.
The Bible.
Yes.
The Torah. The Bhagavad Gita. Gaddafi's red book. Or was it green book? Green book. Why did you choose the Quran?
Well, partly it was chosen for me. I guess mostly it was chosen for me.
Then you haven't chosen the Quran yourself. I tell you, let's take it further. Killing unnecessarily is bad. Giving charity is good. What will you say?
I would say that makes sense.
Why does it make sense?
Why? I guess I would chalk it up to being, it appeals to my fitrah.
It appeals to your fitrah. So therefore, and this is the most accurate answer, although we need to analyze that afterwards sometime and deal with that fitrah business, but it is existentialist, that's why. But it makes sense to me. Who is the one who is making the judgment? Who? You are. When you read the Quran, if it said to you, go and swear at your mother every time the sun rises in the morning, go and slap your father when the sun sets, go and steal when your neighbor is sleeping, what would you do with that Quran?
I'd probably throw it out the window.
But why don't you throw it out of the window? Because it doesn't say that.
No, but there are certain parts of it that, okay, so
wait, we need to work through that. So when you say the Quran makes sense, it is you are the prime subject. Don't you see that? The Quran is secondary to you. If Quran is a guidance, then you are nobler than the Quran. The Quran has come to guide you. It is at your service. So now when you say, what do I do with the Quran, with Sunnah, with Hadith and whatnot, the basic starting point is you yourself. There is God in you, and God talks through you, and God discerns through you. You are the most divine being. Quran is secondary to your divinity. So the first step that you take is, you go back to your own self and say, hold on, does it make sense? This is what the Sahaba did when the Prophet went to them. They said, does it make sense? Yes, it does. When they said it makes sense, it was their judgment. It was their truth. What didn't make sense, they asked the Prophet, well, I'm not ready to subscribe to this view until you explain it to me. And the Prophet did. On other instances, the Prophet said, well, look, did everything else make sense? They said, yes. Through that, do you trust Allah? They said, yes. He said, well, look, there's no harm in this, and Allah knows what He's talking about, just believe in it. And they said, fine. Can you see that?
I can see that. But does that mean that if there are parts in the Quran that I don't agree with,
you don't agree with,
then I don't follow it?
No, if you don't agree with it, then to follow something you don't agree with is a transgression upon the right of God. Unless, of course, your thinking is not accurate. Like, for example, somebody says, well, I don't understand prayers, I don't agree with it. That's nonsense. There's no agreement or disagreement with it because it's doing no harm. But if somebody says, oh, the law of apostasy, kill the person who changes their faith, say this doesn't make sense to me. In fact, doing this is transgression against God and humanity. I don't know what this question means, but if it means, well, where do we begin? I think this question is something that prods away at us and nags us on many occasions, but it's too frightening, and we shy away from it. But without going mad, if we can look into the mirrors and really look at ourselves in the mirror and into our eyes and ask, who am I? As I said, don't stare at ourselves for too long because it can actually make us lose our sanity, but only to that point where we begin to feel, well, who am I? There is that thing there in all of us. Who am I? If we've asked God to be in this world, are you saying that there are other worlds in which we have existed to ask this of God, or was it during another time in the current world? If so, could this not bring in the notion of reincarnation? First and foremost, let's deal with reincarnation. The way the Hindu sort of theology promotes reincarnation would not make sense, because reincarnation states an actualized identity is reduced to zero and it begins again. That doesn't happen because it's not itself anymore. I am an actualized entity which has an identity. I'm actualized. I cannot be reduced to zero and start again, because I am me and I'm not me. So the reincarnated creature is not me at all, because it's beginning its own journey of identity. When I am I, it can never be destroyed. I can never go in a regressive trend and begin the journey again. It can only be a progressive trend. So if we mean transmigration from one realm to another realm, then yes, that makes sense. From the womb to this world, from this world to another realm, so on and so forth. That makes perfect sense. We made the choice. As I said, if that satisfies anyone, then fine. The inquiry comes to an end. But for a thinking being, it would not be satisfactory, because I would ask, well, who was I to make a choice? Can you see that? And then it would be asked, well, why was I created and given a choice? And it will become a circular argument. We have to end at a point in saying, I am and I wanted to do this. I don't understand how, but this is exactly how it's happened. Yes? I am, as opposed to saying, I have always been, I am, as opposed to saying I was given the choice, to say I am the choice and I am the choice maker. I know this all sounds a bit strange, but do think about it whenever we get the time. If you are who you are and you have to find out who you are, then what's the point of sending all the guidance and talk of heaven and hell? I am, the whole of the universe is. All of it is the awakening. As a human being, my awakening comes in different areas of humanity, not only through me. Yes? So the great prophet who is the awakening, the great awakening, yes, he is my awakening. And that is why I take utmost pride in the being of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this is the peak at which humanity can arrive. And of course, I'm saddened by the likes of Fir'aun, Yazid, Shaddad, that is a level at which my humanity can fall. So the guidance is again internal. We want to talk about God in the next session in a very, very meaningful way. Very meaningful way, a God that is a real God. Duality, what do you mean? Please define duality. What we don't mean by duality is that I am other than you. No, there is duality in that sense. But incidentally, have you ever noticed a child when they learn numbers? The child will say this. We will say to the child 1, 2, 3, 4. The child will say 1, 1, 1, 1. And the child is very accurate because this is one. This is one. This is one. This is one. Two does not exist in reality. If you join these together, they are two ones. If you were to take distinctions away from it, they will become one one. There is no two. Two is the construct of the mind. We need to tap into those facets of thinking that allow us to do these things. What we mean by duality is a God in another world, we in another world, God looking at us in this world as we imagine through our analogy, that I am looking over my children and I'm governing them, or I'm looking at a program in the computer and I'm modifying it. That analogy of God and us is an inaccurate analogy. Yes? God is far, far beyond that. The Imam was asked, does God force us? He said, God is far more just than to do that. The Imam was asked, does God leave us alone? He said, God's authority is far greater than for him to do that. He can't leave you alone and he's not forcing you. The answer is to be found somewhere else. Or as Imam Ali said, he is with everything, yet he does not touch anything. He is other than everything, yet there is no distance between him and anything. He is not confined in any space, yet no space is devoid of him. Now this seems totally contradictory to our minds. But if we can establish a different model, it seems perfectly accurate. Yeah? How do tests and trials help us understand who I am? The very fact that I react in a particular way reveals to me who I am. When faced with danger, you see, today I'm very calm and composed in front of you, yes? Very calm and very composed. Okay. Now, after I fasted for 20 hours, then come and ask me some of these questions. See how I respond. That will reveal to me how I am. That's a test. Or put me in one of these, I'm not going to name the airline, but let's say I'm sitting on the plane and impact becomes imminent. At that point, see how calm I am. If I start sweating, saying, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, God, it just shows that is my true nature that is emerging now. Tests are designed for me to be unveiled, to reveal my own self, and for me to take stock of that and to improve on that. I know who I am, this test will make it apparent for me. If God was so kind, why does He punish the mu'min with azab of qabr? God never punishes anybody. God is God. He is the one who takes away punishment. I am the one who creates punishment. When I can't sleep at night through jealousy, who is punishing who? Believe me, if I had fallen ill and suffered from a common cold and become bedridden for 10 days, that would be easier to bear than the pangs of jealousy. They ruin me, totally ruin me. They take my peace away. Who is punishing me? That's the real punishment. Greed, unable to see anybody else prosper. My dispute with my children and others. Why aren't they listening to me? Who is punishing who? Grave is a place of manifestation of my own traits that are in there. As Allah says, the day in which the hearts shall open up and reveal whatever is there. Grave is one of those places where the heart will just yield and throw out whatever is there. And that is me. I am the punishment unto myself. I don't know if you heard this story. When Bahlul was coming somewhere and the Khalifa asked him, where are you coming from? He said, from hell. He said, oh, how hot is it? He said, there is no fire in hell. He said, how strange. He said, that's what I thought. He said, and? He said, well, I asked the keeper of hell, well, where is the fire? He said, well, there is no fire. He said, but we hear about the fire. He said, yes, that's the fire you will bring with yourselves. There is no punishment. I am the punishment. Why is the waladuz zina not given privileges like healthy child born? He should be, and there is no reason why the waladul zina should not be given the privileges. God is hidden treasure to be known. You also said God cannot be known. Can you explain? Yes. God as God is the entirety of the beauty in every aspect and more than that. Yes? As much as I begin to know myself, I will know I don't know enough because I don't know you. The more I fade away and begin to know, the greater is the being of God. God as God has no end. Even the physical universe now, they have deduced that, and it's contradictory in terms, it is both infinite and expanding, which doesn't make sense at all. It's infinite and expanding. It's just nonsensical, the terms. But we've been forced to use this term to make any sense of the universe. If the universe as universe, which is one aspect of existence, cannot be known, and it's so mysterious, then imagine the state of God. The Prophet said, the Imam said, La ya'lam kayfa huwa illahu, nobody knows how he is save he. The Prophet said, Rabbi arini al-ashya kama hiya, O Lord, show me things as they are. The Prophet humbly acknowledged his inability. The Prophet at other instances says, Rabbi zidni tahayyuran, Lord, increase me in my bewilderment, because the mystery is just so alluring. So that is God. God as God can only be known by God. No individual awakening, no matter how grand they become, can know God. As soon as they come to a stage, God is other than that. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are beginning the final discussion where we look at the idea of prayers, intervention, destiny, free will, through the whole notion of existence and presence. Now, it actually flows from our earlier discussion in which we stated that the key thing to understand is. Is the only thing. There is existence. We can't understand anything beyond that. And anything that we bring into this notion of existence seems to be alien. So we need to examine is as it is. Now, if we look at is, and we say that actually existence is one existence, there's unity in being, without going through the sort of philosophical examples or explanations, we can say that no, existence is. With the mind's eye, I can see that existence is one. Although intuitively, I am not feeling it as yet, but maybe at some point in time I might begin to feel it. But let us at least give some credibility to the fact that existence is one existence and we are all interconnected and we are in a state of unity of being. Earlier on we were having a discussion at the table and we stated that I can look at a spectacle of a mother and a child, and I can see and deduce from there that this mother bears immense affection towards her child. On the other hand, I am with my own mother and I feel the affection. So there's a huge difference between observing, analyzing, seeing, intellectual realization, and between feeling. Here we begin to talk in an alien language altogether, because we are talking in a language that is not making us feel. It is only describing what is supposed to be felt and understood. We gave this example earlier on, that Mr. Spock from Star Trek is told, he was obviously operating on black and white of logic, he could not feel emotions. He was told that when somebody smiles, it means that they are happy. So he sees a person smiling and behind that person is a gun. And he says, this man is so happy. We'll say, no, this is the smile of anguish. He is told that when somebody tears, they're very sad. And he sees a mother embracing her child that was lost. And she becomes tearful. And he says, she is so sad. We'll say, no, these are tears of joy. What we are about to explain now is in an alien language, a foreign language. We are talking more about those things which are intuitively felt, explaining them in an intellectual way. But then it's not useless at all, because at least it opens up the scope in our minds that there is something more. As Rumi says, that your understanding of the truth is like a person observing a picture of a warrior painted upon a wall. But he says, examine closely. He has eyes, but he sees not. Ears with which he hears not. He has a sword drawn, but it has no edge. He has a hand, but it is not charitable. Yet it is not useless, because that picture will prompt another level of inquiry within you. And that is what is intended. When we said that this humble slave of Allah is not here to give answers, the only reason we said that was because we don't want to defeat the purpose. In the lives that we have led, they have been very, very lazy lives. I have been bewildered and baffled, so I've run to the doors of others to get answers to satisfy me, not knowing that there can be no answers. Now we could have taken that route and provided certain philosophical explanation or emotive, spiritual explanation. You would have gone away satisfied. But your inner self would have asked once again, I am not satisfied. Instead of doing that, we pointed at certain ways of thinking, knowing full well that your answer is your answer. This is your journey. Can you not see that? It's a wonderful journey. You are only here for the next few days, months, or years. Make the most of it. My goodness, what a journey in which you have awoken. My God, the universe has decided to awaken through you. Imagine what a tremendous thing this is. You are the author right now. Carve your world, your universe, your destiny. Do what you want. Make hell as cold as you want. Heaven as damned as you want. It's yours. It's your opportunity. How awful would it be that you are taken and placed in a matrix system and wired up with all the wires and thrown in an illusionary world in which me and you exist right now? How much better it would be to take those wires off for a moment. My God, take it off. See the truth for what it is worth. Explore the truth. The fact of the matter is, but the answer is not there even then, because you are the answer, and you have to grow into the answer that you are. And that's what makes this journey a very unique, beautiful, marvelous journey. That my answer awaits me, yet I myself am the answer, and I have to allow myself to become the answer. That is the whole truth of this journey. Even the Quran that we read is only as good as we want to make it. At this point, the God that we worship is only a God that we worship. As Shams Tabrizi was met by scholars of the apparent faith, and they were talking about a vengeful God, he said, you've decided to worship a vengeful God. Worship a God of love and you will find him most forgiving. As the Prophet said, I will go into the lecture as through naturally in this course of this talk. The Prophet said, O Imam Ali, he said, if you want to know whether God loves you, ask your heart, do I love God? If you want to know, is God desirous of meeting me? Ask your soul, am I desirous of meeting God? The Prophet said, he who knows his soul knows his Lord. If my soul is vengeful, my Lord is vengeful. If my soul is affectionate and loving, then my Lord is affectionate and loving. But of course, he meant something other than this. But what he did mean in the concrete was, he who knows his Lord knows, he who knows his soul knows his Lord. What does that mean? You will know your Lord. You have a particular journey. You have a particular calling. You have a particular path you need to take. He who knows his soul will not know the God of Muhammad. Only he knows his God. The relationship of God to each of us is like a relationship of mother to each one of her children. They are all her children equally, but every one of them relates to her differently. That is a relationship we have with God. Now, with this prelude, we go into the whole issue of destiny and free will. Although we shan't be able to conclude any one of these discussions, but we need to point at 3 different discussions before we can start making sense of the whole issue. When we talk about destiny, what do we mean? And let's look at the flaws in our thinking. We say, as a theist, God knew what was going to happen. Then he initiated existence. The existence cannot defy what he knew was going to happen. Are we agreed on that? Can anything be contrary to the way God knew it was going to happen? Then there is no free will. I ask a question based on the is. Does God have a yesterday and a tomorrow? Obviously not. God as God is not upon earth, does not have day and night. So God as God does not have a yesterday nor a tomorrow. God as God has the absolute now. So when we say God knew, it needs to be replaced by another formulation of God knows. Does that make sense? As opposed to saying God knew, we have to say God knows. Then we have to ask, when am I making my choice? Now. So when is the sacred pen inscribing my destiny upon the sacred tablet? Now. When am I making my choice? Now. My choice is divine destiny, and divine destiny is my choice. Does that make sense? In accordance with the model that we talked about earlier on of throwing away duality altogether. It is an eternal present. Now, if that is understood, then let us talk about my choice at present. My choice at present. If we can rid our minds of past and of future, if we can rid our minds of a dualistic model, then we ask about my choice at present. I chose to come here in the morning and arrive here precisely at 9:20. I made the intention. I did not arrive here at 9:20. Why? Why did that happen? Think about it carefully. I made a choice, but my choice was contingent on everybody else's choices. When a gathering comes together anywhere, I say, by Allah, this is a miracle that everybody actually got here today. Because there are infinite numbers of choices that everybody is making. And for the world to conspire and make it all happen is a miracle in itself. Think about it. I made a choice to come here at 9:20. The car could have broken down. My asthma could have gotten worse and I would have been hospitalized. There could have been an accident upon the road. There could have been another emergency anywhere else to which I was called. I could have flown back yesterday. There were millions of choices being made, hundreds and thousands of choices being made on the same road at the same time. For my choice to culminate into an action as I desired is a miracle, because it was contingent on everybody else's choices. Can you see that? and for 100 people or 50 people's choices to be made and for all of them to come together, that is showing that there is another truth altogether. It shows that this world of ours is conspiring and making things happen. It's not a dead being, it's a living being. And we have just forgotten about it, or we haven't awoken to it. Two people walking upon a street, one stumbles upon a rock and falls and breaks a limb, and the other one looks down just in time. There is no coincidence. One is in tune with the greater existence, the other one may not be. One walks over the crawling creatures, the other one becomes mindful and steps aside. Our awakening to the earth is then responded by the earth. When I make my choice is contingent upon every other choice that is being made in the present. Now here what we want to say is that when we want things to happen in intervention, think about how wrongly we are thinking. All of the prayers that we are making are worldly prayers. We ask Allah for children. They're not going to come from outside existence, are they? They are produced within the world. We ask Allah for a lengthy life. It is the property of the world. We ask Allah for safety. It is something to be accommodated by the earth. We ask Allah for wealth. It is something accommodated by the earth. All of our prayers, in the way that me and you are understanding them, are worldly, earthly prayers. There is another superior prayer that we'll talk about in just a little while, which is a truer prayer. These prayers are accommodated by the earth itself. For Allah to allow Sarah and Ibrahim to have a child, this despicable matter that I feel has no value, had to modify itself. And the fact that it modified itself shows that the earth has that ability. It shows that matter is not as despicable as I understand it to be. It's quite different from what I see it as. The thing is, here we begin to open up to the greater truth, that there is a truth beyond what I have understood. The world is a living being. Now, for many of us, we may have read a book, The Alchemist. It talks in a way about this thing, how the earth conspires. But scientific tests have been done which show to us that our attitudes towards the world is reciprocated by the world. There was that test done by the Japanese fellow that when we are calm with the water, it structures itself in a very harmonious way. But when we speak harshly to the water, or our attitudes are not right, it is distorted. The world is affected by us. She is a living being. We are a part of it. Our prayers are granted by this earth, and she makes them all happen. In other words, we are making those prayers happen ourselves to a great degree. To a very, very great degree, we are making it happen at this level of discussion. They conducted certain tests that when people were cooking food and they had a calm disposition, that the food's constitution was, structure was beautiful. But when the people were not in such a calm state and they cooked food, it appeared very distorted in accordance with the way they were doing it. And then we consume the food, and of course it has adverse effects upon us. What I'm trying to say is that we need to awaken to the present and to the greater being. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Quran. And He states, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. There are people who remember Allah standing, sitting, and on their sides. And then they become contemplative. And they look at the heavens and the earth. And then they exclaim, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. O Lord, you have not created any of it in vain. This is their awakening to the greater truth. They are beginning to become one with the Mother Earth, with the cosmos. They are awakening to it. Then they understand the meaning of karma. Then they understand the meaning of what the Prophet has said, Kama tudin tudan. As you do to others, the same will happen to you. It is a living being. When a person believes in a truth sincerely and follows it, the world honors that truth. You will say, well, what about a ruthless businessman? He is the one who is raping his mother. And soon his life will come to an end. And as the hadith says, the earth will exclaim, you are on my back and I loathed you, now you are within me and I shall make you account for it. Or as the Quran says, the earth shall spit her content and shall speak out aloud and complain and say what has happened. If we can awaken to this earth, this beautiful entity that is there, not even the greater world, and understand that our attitude towards the earth is something that is reciprocated, then we will see that intervention to a great degree comes through us and our attitude. That is one level of intervention. Now, Bibi Maryam's mother had become old. She was the sister of the wife of Nabi Zakaria. They were sisters and they were both very old and none of them had children. Neither did Zakaria and his wife, nor did the mother of Mary. She saw an egg hatching. Surah Imran, in the tafsir of Surah Imran. When the egg hatched and the mother came and started feeding the young, her sentiments were aroused. Her heart melted. She became tearful. And she said, "Oh Lord, grant me a child," which was an impossible prayer. And Allah honored her and granted her a child. But who became the cause for the granting of that prayer? She herself. She awoke to the greater truth. She mellowed within herself. And as she mellowed, the Mother Earth responded, because the prayer could only be accepted by Earth herself. The child was not going to be dropped from Mars. In the same way, Zakaria saw Mary and how she was being fed. Zakaria melted. And now look at his prayer within the Quran. He stated, Allah says, in a very quiet tone, he pleaded to Allah. He said, Rabbi, inni wahana al-'azmu minni, washta'ala al-ra'su shayba, wa lam akun bidu'aika rabbi shaqiyya. First he acknowledges, oh Lord, my bones have become brittle, and my white head has turned white. But even then, O Lord, I have never been disappointed of you granting me my prayer. Grant me a child who would succeed me and succeed from Ali Yaqub. And O Lord, make him such and such. So he acknowledges the impossibility of the situation. Then he acknowledges Allah as the overriding principle. Immediately God responds. And immediately Zakaria says, "Oh Lord, but how can I have a child?" And the angel said, "Are you expressing disbelief? Allah does what He wills." But it was here that Zakaria became the agency for that intervention. He himself, his outlook, his attitude. And that is why the prophetic narration says that when you want to make a prayer, make it with a broken heart. Make it with tearful eyes. Imam Sadiq says, when tears appear within your eyes, your prayers are granted. And that is why the prophetic narration says, acknowledge to God your inability and then ask God and He will intervene. Because that intervention is a beautiful system that is happening and you are a part and parcel of it. You are the means of intervention. That is the awakening to the immediate earth. Everybody is making their choices in the present. The beautiful, conscious cosmos conspires to make it all happen. Imagine the work that the cosmos has to do, the destiny maker has to do, to make each and every intention come to fruition. It in itself is a huge miracle. Or Moses parting the Nile, we gave this example once before. It was a tsunami. But look at the meticulous way in which it comes together. Those tectonic plates were set into motion billions of years ago. Moses was born 30 years ago. Pharaoh has begun to chastise these people by subduing them a few days ago. The Israelites find themselves at the in that unforgivable situation right now, in which there is death by drowning or death by the sword. And God has to make it all come true to grant Israelites safe passage and to destroy Pharaoh. The motions that were set in place billions of years ago, the motion that is being set in place right now, these prayers, that promise, everything comes together so meticulously. When we begin to observe this, not intuitively, if we can observe it intuitively, we will start living in a different world altogether. But intellectually, even then we are prompted to think beyond. Now, that is one level. Beyond that is God as God, the absolute present. Whenever we say to God, intervene, it is a prayer that is worth making. Now the Prophet has said, ask God for every single thing that you do. The intention was that some of these people will awaken. They will awaken to the truth and see what is really happening. God is not only the whole cosmos, but God is God. Jalla Jalaluhu, lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There is nothing like Him at all. He conceives, perceives every eye, no eye perceives Him. He is beyond every single thing that can be imagined, yet He is closer than the jugular vein. He is closer to me than my own heart. He is closer to me than my own soul that begins to witness the hereafter. This is what He says in the Quran. So He is He in His all glory, and He is not far away. The one who is closer to me than my jugular vein does not require further level of proximity. So if God can be invoked with that beautiful heart, then He deserves to be invoked, and He can intervene in my own system through causative system, but I really don't believe in causation in the way the philosophers believe in it, or can overrule causation altogether, and that would take on the form of a superior causation. We can maybe explain this at another level. Now we come to another level of our discussion. What is a prayer? Contrary to what we understand, we think prayers are asking things of God. Da'a and dua is the inner cry. We can't stop that inner cry, whether we like it or not. The whole of my body is crying out for growth. This is a dua. My intellectual being is crying out. This is a dua. My spiritual being is crying out. This is a dua. The whole cosmos is one big cry. Who am I? Complete me. Dua means to cry out. And Allah says, Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call me and I shall respond to you. Allah is not saying, ask of me. Even if you don't ask of Him, He will give you your sustenance anyway. People who don't worship Him like I do, they all are sustained, aren't they? We've got it wrong. It is like the great emperor telling me, Arif, ask me. And I say, give me $1 million. He says, take it. Then he smiles. He says, but do you know something? Had you asked me for the crown that I am wearing, I would have given it to you. Had you asked me to vacate the seat and the throne upon which I sit, I would have vacated it and given it to you. I could have given you everything. You sufficed for $1 million. It was up to you. And then he tells me, but what have you gained from this $1 million anyway? What have you gained? Allah asks me. Even if I give you this $1 million, this, that, what have you gained? You as you, what have you gained? You haven't gained anything until you have gained yourself. Or in other words, you haven't gained anything until you have gained me. As Imam Hussain says, what has he gained, the one who has lost you? And what has he lost? The one who has gained you. I would much rather not ask for the kingdom of Sulaiman, for that is child's play. For my God can give me the whole of this cosmos without it affecting him in the least. But why should I ask for the whole universe? If I ask for the sun on one hand, my God can give it to me. And moon on the other, he can give it to me. But should I suffice with the sun and the moon? I want my Lord from my Lord. I want the eternity of everything. As in Hadith al-Mi'raj, the Hadith states, Allah says to the Prophet that when my righteous soul dies in the blinking of an eye, he is brought to me. I ask of the soul, explain what transpired within the world. It trembles and says, O Lord, ever since I have recognized you, I have trembled in your awe and yearned you and was oblivious of all else. God responds, you have spoken the truth. I will keep you in a place where there is no veil between me and you. No veil of paradise, no veil of huris, no veil of flowing rivers. Just you, just me. Now imagine the author of paradise that is so alluring. How beautiful he must be. And what do I gain if I don't gain myself? If I don't gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Allah's call is, call me, not necessarily ask me of things. And that is why the prayers of the Quran are all very different. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً وَهَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا. O Lord, grant us mercy from yourself and guide us in our ways. وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. O Lord, cause us to die with the righteous people. Look at the beautiful prayers within the Quran. They have never said, God, give me buildings, give me wealth, give me this, give me that. The prayer Abraham makes is that when I'm sick, he cures me. When I'm astray, he guides me. Such a beautiful prayer. These are known as the vertical prayers. So what is a prayer? The real prayer. The real prayer is one of inviting God and becoming God-like. Now, how does that happen? Allah has given the clues within the Quran. He has stated, Allah waliyul ladina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. Allah is the wali of those who believe, purges them from darkness and brings them into light. What happens here is that I am. And as I am, I have to make sense of God and the world, all of it in my context. God has become as limited as I. The world has become as limited as I. On the other hand, I can lose my I to gain myself, because my real self is what awaits me, is God Himself. But I can't lose myself until I am comfortable. Now, my mother doesn't know who I am. I'm a very private individual. But if I have a friend who is an intimate friend, who I can trust, then I begin to unveil myself, begin to peel myself, acknowledge my insecurities, my anxieties, my fears to them, with full confidence that they will not judge me. This is the point of awakening. This is when I awaken and I see myself for what I am through the other. This wilaya is this caring, loving, gentle, intimate, non-judgmental friendship. I say to my Lord, oh my Lord, I am despicable, do you not see? He says, I have accepted you as you are. You know, and sometimes people say, we'll expose you. I say, well, I can't even look at myself in the mirror. What can you say about me? That would be worse than that. Expose me as much as you want. What difference is it going to make? So Lord is the one friend who accepts me as I am. And prayers are designed for me to find that intimacy with my God. When there is alignment of body, mind, and soul, I begin to open up. And as I open up, I begin to bloom like a rose and emerge. And the divine architect, my Lord, He begins to work on that substance that makes itself available through submission and begins to create and recreate, fashion and refashion. And that is the point where intervention has the truest meaning of all. That I allow myself to be made through Him. As far as the worldly prayers are concerned, there are 2 levels of intervention. I'm just recapping now briefly. That I awaken to the world and to its nature and the unity that is existing there. And I become the prayer and the granting of the prayer in the worldly sense. And I, in humility, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because the substance here is ripe, He then intervenes. But then He may choose to do it at different stages and different levels. For me, He gives me my children, gives me my health, gives me my well-being. For Hussein, He takes it all away. And we have to finish with this example. Because he did ask for the life of Akbar, Allah took it away. Because Allah said, I would much rather give you the real life, which can only be after death. The life of all life. Abbas asks for water to be taken. He said, I will give you a strength that is unending. Instead, Hussein asks for victory. Allah says, I will give you a victory that has no end. He decided to respond in that way, but they trusted him. And when we look at the final state of Hussein, he did not complain. He said, Ridan biqada'ihi. I am well pleased, and with a smile and a radiating face, he said that. So my Lord decides to respond in a variety of ways. If He wants to give me the truest boon of it all, then He will take everything away from me and give me His self. And by His self, I will have everything. And on the other hand, if He sees me as a child, then He will grant me my prayers immediately as I ask them. Inshallah, this was the final session, and maybe we can all have final contributions. So give glad tidings to those who endure and who state Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. But endurance, what it does is, it gives us a greater state of existence. And Allah says, Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Allah is with those who endure. So today, if I don't react at the abuse that is being thrown at me, then it means I've become more godly, God-like. Because God is not moved by worship and denial. If somebody were to deny me, but in their time of need I were to give to them and endure, then I've become God-like. I don't have need, but I can give. If I can stop myself and endure and not lie, then I've become godly, where truth has merit. In any given situation, if we can endure, we become greater than that situation, and it becomes a lesser part of us. 2, Allah said something else within the Quran that points at the first part of our discussion, the last discussion. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are thankful, I will increase you. What does that mean? It means that there is a property of the existence. When you thank Allah, He gives more. And that's how the world yields. So now, when Allah gives me a lot, I thank Him in several ways. By offering physical thanks, or by giving in the way of Allah as a gesture of thanksgiving. On the other hand, if Allah tests me, strains my means, then I say, Oh Allah, thank you. You took this away from me, but you still kept me a contented soul. Oh Allah, this happened to me, but I did not break under the pressure. I thank you. Oh Allah, I have a severe headache, but at least I have not lost my sanity. I thank you. Oh Lord, I was involved in an accident. My limbs have been taken away, but at least I am here so my children don't suffer the total loss of me. We need to thank Allah in every state, and that then allows the world to yield in the positive, and Allah gives more through it. It's amazing when Allah Himself is giving us the formula of success, and we don't follow it. He's saying, thank me, I'll give more. He says, endure and I'm with you. What stops a theist from doing the things that his Lord or her Lord is telling them?
What did we learn from this seminar? And there were 4 of us and 4 views were expressed. One of us said, I need to know who I am and how I respond to my trials and tribulations. Another one said, I think I know who I am because of all the experiences I have encountered. And the third person said, the 2 views of theodicy of Mullah Sadr and the theorist's view of God do not coincide. I am the wave in the ocean, and being of him, I'm going to return as a part of him. And the last one said, the seminar has raised a number of issues. Did we get answers to them all? To view the seminar in that light is perhaps unfair. It has certainly encouraged me as an individual to contemplate over the issues raised and find my own solutions.
Thank you all very, very much. I am sorry if these seminars didn't go quite as we anticipated and expected. I thoroughly enjoyed your company, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Can we recite a Surah Fatiha for the swift recovery of our dear brother Oni Bhai?
Thank you, everyone. And now we'll bring our session to a close. I'll just take 5 more minutes of your time. I'd like to call up Sister Sakina just to give a token of appreciation and say a few words.
When I look around, it's past 3 o'clock on Sunday and we're all here. Nobody seems to want to move. That tells us we all have that yearning to learn and to grow. And we thank none other than Allah for having given us the opportunity to spend 2 days with you, where you've listened to us, provided us a platform to dialogue, and challenged us. While we may not be leaving with answers, we're definitely leaving with thoughts, maybe more questions, in hopes that you will return to continue this journey. Thank you. So to help you return, there's more reading here.
Just to put it more eloquently, what I think Sheikh Arif has done for me personally, and I think gauging from what you all have been saying, I think Khalil Gibran says it in the best of ways. And when he talks about a teacher, he says, the teacher who is indeed wise does not bid you to enter the house of his wisdom, but rather leads you to the threshold of your mind. And I think that's really what the purpose of this seminar was. It wasn't really to get Sheikh Arif's answers. It was really to help you get your own answers. And I think that's what the beautiful thing that has happened here during the course of the 2 days. So thank you very much, Sheikh Arif, from the organization.